Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. And welcome back to Solo RPG Friday. On today's episode, we will discuss some ways, some tips, some general philosophy on turning or playing League of Dungeoneers more like a solo RPG. I'm sure a lot of you kind of anticipated this video. League of Dungeoneers is pretty close to a solo RPG just out of the box. It only requires the player to put in a little effort to kind of flesh out the world, maybe make a persistent world or keep track of a persistent rule, and changing a few things depending on how you would want to play. In the video, I will discuss a few things that I am currently working on to get it to the place where I want to play it more. Because while I do like a lot of League of Dungeoneers, actually I love a lot of League of Dungeoneers, it is a little on the complex side for me. And so I do think playing it as a solo RPG, it does come in under the complex category. This is not a simplistic game. But with League of Dungeoneers, we get a very good system, a solid foundation upon which to build our kind of customized solo experience. With our characters, we have absolutely everything we would need for different kinds of stat checks, for different kinds of skill checks. And so all of that side of the RPG requirements, all of those RPG requirements are taken care of for us straight out of the core book for League of Dungeoneers. All we really need to do is add a few more tools on top of League of Dungeoneers, and we can just bring in all of our favorites. If you have a stack of favorite tools, such as different kinds of card decks or different books of random encounters, things that can just help you facilitate the kind of overall persistent play that you might want more of out of a game like this. So League of Dungeoneers actually offers two ways to play, and actually it's not two different ways, but it has both sandbox play and structured play. So the sandbox play is when you are using this kind of overland map, and all copies of League of Dungeoneers do come with this great hex map, and you can have a big wide open sandbox style RPG using this hex map, traveling from one settlement to another, traveling from one quest location to another, traveling from one geographic location to another. And then when you get into the dungeons, that's when it kind of switches modes and becomes a more board game like game with the structured play. So League of Dungeoneers out of the box does scratch two very different itches. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's such an interesting game, and one of the reasons why it would be so easy to turn into a full-fledged solo RPG experience. In order to keep track of all of the various persistent things in the world, keeping track of what's going on at the various settlements or the various quest sites, or at the lake or in the forest, and that kind of thing, I think it would benefit the soloist to introduce some journal writing. And with that, you could have a page in a journal, one page each dedicated to each quest site or each settlement. Or you could also use index cards to keep track of things. And so we're going to discuss some of these things as we work through this video. One thing that I do want to work on to get this to the place where I enjoy it more is coming up with some rules so I can lone wolf it. One of my major issues with League of Dungeoneers, and it's not a complaint about the game, it's just the kind of gamer I am, is I don't like playing with a full party of 4 heroes in League of Dungeoneers. As a matter of fact, even with 2 full-fledged heroes and a couple simple hired mercenaries, I still find that is a little bit too much for me. especially when it comes to combat. Having to keep track of all four heroes and the monsters on a map, moving them. It takes a lot of time, and it's a lot of bookkeeping that I typically don't enjoy. There's an overhead to it that I don't think I would be able to sustain for a long period of time. And so I want to come up with a system that would allow me to focus on one PC, one protagonist, but they still have they're still joined by three other members of their party, but those members of the party are maybe kind of off in the background. I would use my mercenaries, I would use their abilities and their benefits and their powers more like items rather than full-fledged characters. So let's say I was playing this character here that I rolled up, Collar Finkelroy. He is a halfling alchemist. A halfling alchemist is not a very good solo character, so I would need to flesh out Collar's party with some other mercenaries or heroes. So I might hire a barbarian. Maybe I would hire a thief. And let's say I would also hire a wizard. Okay, so I would take mercenary cards. If you in my play series, in my playlist for Dungeoneers, you can see a detailed look at the various mercenaries that you can hire in this game as NPCs. And I would take those and I would simply write down their stats on one card, all of them. And these mercenaries would be with me, but I wouldn't represent them on the maps. I wouldn't take them into the battle. I would only move around my main character, and the other guys would just be kind of, I would just say they are with me. They're just not represented. They're abstracted, and I would abstract them out of the moment-to-moment gameplay and just use their various skills when I needed to. For instance, so I'm playing as an alchemist, if I came upon a locked door and I needed the thief to unlock the door, well, then I could use that thief's perception and that thief's the skills for unlocking. And I would just say that they are there with me and they are the one doing, they're the character doing that particular, that particular task. I could also use the various mercenaries as a hit point pool to assign damage to. So that would basically, so if my barbarian had 10 hit points, my thief had 8, and my wizard had 8. And then my main character here has 11 hit points. Well, if my main character took damage during a fight, I could actually assign that damage to one of the other characters in my party, one of the auxiliary characters in my party. I couldn't split that damage to among multiple heroes, but one hero could take, or one character could take all of the damage. So that would allow me to kind of offset some of that damage, and I wouldn't have to scale all of the damage down to only being given to one hero. Another thing I could do is in combat, each one of my other characters could be used as a reroll. If I missed an attack, then I could say, okay, well, my barbarian now is going to make an attack. But I would still use kind of my stats, but the various other members of my party would give me rerolls or maybe give me bonuses. So that way I wouldn't have to manage 4 characters. I wouldn't have to worry about their weapons, their armor, because there's a lot going on in League of Dungeoneers. Not only do you have all of your weapons and your gear, but your weapons and your gear can take damage. And even when you're just playing with the mercenaries, there still is too much going on for me. So I was just trying to think of ways that I could abstract that out while still participating with, still engaging with the things that make the various characters unique, such as their skills and their abilities. So that's one thing, one area that I am having to do a little bit of work in order to get the game to the place where I feel like I can have the most fun playing it. One other thing that I am working on, and I have mentioned this before, is taking all of the named NPCs and assigning them a location on the map where they live. That is their home settlement. So let's say that Grom here, and this is where the journaling would come in. So you could have a notebook and you could have, each of the different settlements could be a page in the notebook. Each settlement could be an index card. So maybe here we have Irondale. Okay, so here we have our Irondale journal page. And Irondale, if we look in the core book here, we can look up a little bit about Irondale. We can see what kind of settlement Irondale is. So let's find Irondale here. Irondale, as says here, this settlement has some farms and is the main supplier of wood in the area. Situated on the road north to the capital, the number of travelers passing by is quite high. Consequently, there is an unusual number of shops and inns for such a small village. Okay, so here we know a little bit about Irondale here. In Irondale, we have a blacksmith, we have a general store, an inn, which is also kind of a tavern or a pub. And we have 3 different temples to 3 different gods there in Irondale. So we could say that our NPC Grom lives in Irondale. And I don't know, maybe he's the blacksmith, or maybe he's a blacksmith's apprentice or something like that. We could also take a look here. Okay, so we know we have an inn and a temple. So maybe we want to flesh out the inn or temple. So we could take to Madeline Hale's a traveler's guide to inns and taverns, and we can maybe use one of these inns or one of these taverns here as the inn in Irondale. So maybe Irondale has the Knife Point Inn, and then this could be our inn. And so we could say, okay, so this is called the inn in Irondale is the Knife Point Inn. And that is on page 5 of whatever book we're using. And then this would give us a couple other ways to flesh out that inn. There are some notable patrons here, like Raboon Bald or Helen Finn or Mr. Thomas Timms. So those would be things that we could flesh out. We could have some stories about them going on, what they do in Irondale. We also have 6 different random encounters that we can have in the Knife Point Inn. So every time we visit that inn, we might have some kind of random thing happen to us. And we could also have some other things that we could spend our gold on. Additionally, in Irondale, we know that Grom Hornbrough lives there, but he is a mercenary and he might be out doing his own quests. So we could say that we want to hire Grom as part of a side quest. Maybe Grom's a great fighter and we know that he needs to go. We've heard a rumor that Grom needs to go to this dungeon in this crypt off to the south in order to retrieve some kind of relic to take it back to Irondale and have the blacksmith work on it in order to prevent an explosion of undead or something like that. Any way you want to come up with an interesting little side quest would be good. So, but we can we would travel to Irondale, and then maybe Grom is hanging out at the Knife Point Inn, but maybe he's not, because with each settlement is associated with a number of different quest sites surrounding it. The small settlements have 6 different quest sites. So Irondale here is shown in teal. And then the various quest sites, we have this crypt here. We have a little tower here. Some kind of little burned out village up here, or some kind of looks like a temple there, a tower there, some kind of pagoda there or something. So maybe our characters, we come into Irondale, we're looking for Grom, we go to the inn and we roll a d6, and on a roll of a 1, he is actually out on his own quest, making some money as a mercenary. And so we need to track him down. And so then we could roll up a random quest, and we could roll the location. And let's say we rolled a 2. Well, then we would know that Grom is over here. Grom Hornbrough is over here going on his own quest. And so we could travel to that location, go through the quest, and then we could use one of those side quest cards when we create our dungeon. And when we come across the side quest card, well, then that next corridor or the next room would be where Grom is. And then we could then hook up with him and help him on his quest. He could help us on our quest. And then we could travel back to Irondale and then come up with a couple other side quests to go on with him as we develop his story, as we develop the story of Irondale, as we maybe develop the story of some of the patrons that live or that are at the Knife Point Inn and that kind of thing. So there are all kinds of different ways that we can create these kinds of persistent worlds. And it just takes a little bit of journaling, but the core system of League of Dungeoneers really does give us a solid foundation upon which we can build our own kind of customized game. As we're traveling throughout the land, it would also be very easy to incorporate some other tools, bring in some other tools, some of your favorite charts or favorite decks of cards, such as the outdoor encounter cards, which we have looked at on this channel before. I absolutely love these things. There are so many interesting encounters in this deck. And because League of Dungeoneers is already set in a very generic setting, any kind of fantasy tool that you have fits perfectly. So all of these cards fit perfectly. You could also incorporate, of course, from the usual suspects, anything from your Table Fables 1 or 2. This book fits seamlessly into the world of League of Dungeoneers, as well as the Ultimate Random Encounters book. So this has all kinds of different encounters that you could use. We have different encounters in cities, villages, forests, swamps, undergrounds, and caves, mountains, on the road, dungeons, sea, and desert. And because this nice hex map that comes with League of Dungeoneers has all of those various settings, then this book is super useful as well, as is Untold Encounters of the Random Kind. You know, my favorite book of random kind of generic fantasy encounters. This book could fit seamlessly into any game you have of League of Dungeoneers. It's especially useful to use the dungeons to come up with fleshing out the dungeons a little more, because when you go in to a dungeon, when you move in League of Dungeoneers, when you move into a dungeon and you are engaging in that more structured play, you might want to bring in some of the dungeon encounters from this book in order to help flesh out the dungeons and learn backstories about the dungeons, develop your backstories about the various dungeons, the denizens that live there. What are they doing? What have they been engaging with? You might roll up where there's some kind of, necromancer who lives in this tower here. And what is he doing? Maybe he's having some undead dwarves that he has risen from the dead. And maybe they are actually built digging a tunnel underneath this lake all the way to Windfair or something like that. League of Dungeoneers also comes with a whole bunch of different outdoor maps. And each one of these could be a side quest. There's some kind of mythical stone there, or maybe we have to go to this lake, this little pond, and summon some kind of water elemental. Maybe we have to dive deep into this pond and we come out in another place on the map, and it's a quest. So really, what League of Dungeoneers provides to the soloist is the opportunity to have these kinds of really big, grand sandbox experiences. And yet it also provides us with that structured play when we go into the dungeon. We have these concrete, more of a board game like set of rules to handle the crunch of the tactical crunch and the skirmish style combat. And so we kind of get the best of both worlds. In some ways, this is kind of like, think of it as combining Morkborg with Forbidden Psalms. So you're playing Morkborg when you are doing your role playing, when you're exploring the world and developing your stories, and then you kind of switch gears into Forbidden Psalm when you go into a more detailed combat. Well, this has all of that in one book. all you really need to bring to it is your favorite tools. And we all have our favorite tools. We all have our things that we rely on in order to help flesh out our solo sessions. Another thing you could do is these Inkwell side quest cards. You could take your dungeon deck of those, and each one of these could actually be assigned to a quest site on the map. And what's kind of cool is all of the quest sites have a number, and I believe there's about 40 of them. And you can roll 2d20 to have that white number, and that'll give you where that quest is on your map. However, all of these quests here, they all have a number because the cards are numbered. So you could do a very random draw, and let's say number 11. Okay, so number 11 is here. So we could say that this quest takes place in number 11. This would give us some kind of persistent thing associated with that particular hex there. And then this is maybe the dungeon. You could take this as a map, and then you could create your random dungeon using the various tiles and all of that. But this would also give us a little story. So to pay a ransom for a prince, the PCs escort a huge amount of money through a dangerous underground passage, but they are not the only ones that know about the traveling treasure. Getting the PCs involved, so this will give you some little adventure hooks. It will suggest a couple encounters, so maybe we have a couple of these encounters from Irondale on our way to the tower, and so on. So there really are just all kinds of different ways that you can incorporate all of the various tools that you already have into your solo games of League of Dungeoneers. This map is so awesome. I love this map. You will see this map. I know I've said it many times before, but you will be seeing this map in multiple games on the Dungeon Dive. You will be seeing this map in a whole host of other YouTube channels that focus on solo RPGs, just because it is so useful and it offers up so many opportunities for the soloist. But yeah, I just wanted to do a really quick kind of overview of some things that I am working on, some various kinds of changes I'm making to get it to be the kind of solo game that I want. And to do that, I'm having to strip out some things, basically having to do with the detailed combat and the detail of the structured dungeon play, but keeping all of the things I do like, such as the various settlements, the characters and their skills, and how you can have your attribute checks and all of that stuff with all of the other components, and combine it with a whole bunch of other tools to make a super customized version of League of Dungeoneers for solo play. So all right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.